Dinesh D'Souza is a conservative author who once served as a policy analyst in the Reagan White House. He's also the president of a small Christian college in New York City, and now he's a filmmaker as well. The film, 2016 Obama's America, is based on The Roots of Obama's Rage, D'Souza's best-selling and controversial book, first published in 2010. I read the Forbes magazine cover piece that D'Souza wrote as a sort of preview of the book. I thought it was absurd, as did many on the left and right, but it did draw a lot of attention. But more than just the silliness of the conclusion that D'Souza drew about what motivates Obama, the disregard for accuracy stunned me. He seemed to go out of his way to be mistaken, avoiding the truth as if it were a puddle to sidestep. Here's a typical example of the wrongness to be found in D'Souza's book, The Roots of Obama's Rage. This is also found in the Forbes article. As is well known, a Pan Am flight carrying 259 people, mostly Americans, was destroyed by a bomb over Lockerbie, Scotland, killing everyone on board and 11 people on the ground. A Libyan citizen named Megrahi was convicted by a Scottish court and sentenced to life imprisonment. In 2009, however, he was granted a release because he suffered from prostate cancer and was not expected to live much longer. Much of the world objected to his release, including the Obama administration. In Obama's own words, quote, "I think all of us here in the United States were surprised, disappointed, and angry about the release." D'Souza, however, feels that this anger was a show, that his outrage was contrived, and that Obama actually preferred that Megrahi, the bomber, go free. As D'Souza says, Obama's perception of him, that's Megrahi, as an anti-colonial resistor would explain why he gave tacit approval for this murderer of hundreds of Americans to be released from captivity. Approval for the release? How on earth does D'Souza come to this conclusion? Well, at the time that Scotland was considering the release, a letter had been sent from the U.S. State Department to the Scottish Parliament. Pieces of it were picked up and published by the London Times. Here's D'Souza's take on the matter. The Times, however, obtained a letter the Obama administration sent to Scotland a week before the event, in which it said that releasing Megrahi on, quote, compassionate grounds was acceptable as long as he was kept in Scotland, and would be, quote, far preferable to sending him back to Libya. Scottish officials interpreted this to mean that U.S. objections to Megrahi's release were, quote, half-hearted. They released him to his home country, where he lives today as a free man. Because of the fuss over this letter, the administration took the unusual step of releasing it. Here are a few excerpts. The United States is not prepared to support Megrahi's release on compassionate release or bail. Couldn't be much clearer, not prepared to support Megrahi's release. Here's more. The United States maintains its view that in light of the scope of Megrahi's crime, its heinous nature, and its continued and devastating impact on the victims and their families, it would be most appropriate for Megrahi to remain imprisoned for the entirety of his sentence. Again, that's remain imprisoned. Richard LeBaron, the author of the State Department letter, acknowledges that the final decision is in the hands of the Scottish authorities. He goes on to say, if a decision were made by Scotland to grant conditional release, two conditions would be very important to the United States and would partially mitigate the concerns of the American victims' families. First, any such release should only come after the results of independent and comprehensive medical exams, clearly establishing that Megrahi's life expectancy is less than 3 months. The results of these exams should be made available to the United States and the families of the victims of Pan Am 103. The justification of releasing Megrahi on compassionate grounds would be more severely undercut the longer he is free before his actual death. The second condition was that Megrahi remain in Scotland. Here's the reasoning right from the letter. Second, the United States would strongly oppose any release that would permit Megrahi to travel outside of Scotland. We believe that the welcoming reception that Megrahi might receive if he is permitted to travel abroad would be extremely inappropriate, given Megrahi's conviction for a heinous crime that continues to have a deep and profound effect on so many. So what happened? Megrahi was sent back to Libya, where he did indeed get a welcoming reception, and where he lived for another 3 years or so. D'Souza is as wrong as it is possible to be wrong. Now here's something else that D'Souza believes supports his theory about Obama, a man who is, to quote D'Souza, assiduously working to reduce America's standard of living. According to Dinesh D'Souza, the president's actions are so bizarre that they mystify his critics and supporters alike. Consider this headline from the August 18, 2009 issue of the Wall Street Journal. Obama underwrites offshore drilling. Did you read that correctly? You did. The administration supports offshore drilling, but drilling off the shores of Brazil. With Obama's backing, the U.S. Export-Import Bank offered $2 billion in loans and guarantees to Brazil's state-owned oil company, Petrobras, to finance exploration in the Santos Basin near Rio de Janeiro, not so the oil ends up in the United States. He is funding Brazilian exploration so that the oil can stay in Brazil. But wait, the purpose of this loan was to allow Petrobras to buy U.S. equipment, products, and services. That's good for the U.S. This kind of loan, one that seeks to promote American interests, is exactly the kind of transaction undertaken by the bank involved, the Export-Import Bank of the United States. The bank, upon learning of these accusations, posted a response on their site. It's still there. Here are some highlights. Charge. The U.S. government is giving away more than $2 billion in taxpayer dollars to Brazil's largest oil and gas company to drill for oil in Brazil. Fact. The bank has established a $2 billion financing opportunity for Petrobras to use solely for the purchase of American-made goods and services. The funds go to American exporters as payment for their sales to the Petrobras. Of note, the bank is self-sustaining and no taxpayer dollars are involved. Charge. The loans to Petrobras represent a giveaway of U.S. tax dollars. Fact. EXIM is a self-funding, independent agency which operates at no cost to the taxpayer. EXIM does not make grants and charges fees and interest for the financing it provides. In fact, since 2006, the EXIM Bank has generated more than $3.4 billion in revenue for U.S. taxpayers. Charge. America is exporting jobs to Brazil as a result of the loans. Fact. Only American-made goods and services qualify for EXIM Bank loans or guarantees. It is notable that the bank's bipartisan board unanimously approved the preliminary commitment to Petrobras on April 14, 2009, before any Obama appointees joined the bank. In fact, at the time, the bank's board consisted of 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats, all of whom were appointed by President George W. Bush. Well, in fact, the senior vice president and chief of staff of the bank, Kevin Varney, was so incensed by D'Souza's foolishness that he posted a comment on D'Souza's blog. It reads in part, I received a call yesterday from Nathan Verdi, a fact-checker at Forbes, who was calling to fact-check your article after it was published. Is this how journalism works now? The deal was begun in 2008 with career staffers and approved in 2009 by 5 Bush-appointed board members. Using this transaction as evidence for, quote, an anti-colonial Kenyan ideology was preposterous. It's false and it's wrong. Again, this comes from the bank. Well, it's for this kind of thing, not bothering to check the facts, being unaware or hiding the actual facts of a matter, and not addressing falsehoods once they've been clearly pointed out, that I call Dinesh D'Souza America's wrongest man. There's more wrongness to come, so stay tuned to this channel.